Okay, so this time let's proceed to the psychosocial development in young adulthood. Now that napag-usapan na natin yung mga physical and cognitive development. Okay, so ano ba yung mga psychosocial changes na nangyayari sa atin? Let's start with what are the usual challenges ba when you enter young adulthood? Particularly when you start with emerging adulthood, no, when you enter your early 20s. Okay, so ito yung mga usual challenges, no? Paano masasabing adult ka na? Like, in relation to what I asked in the previous videos, how do you know na hindi ka na bata, that you're already mature? Ito yung ilan sa mga basis no, historically. No? Traditionally, we can say na adult ka na kapag nagtatrabaho ka na, o kaya naman, may sarili ka ng bahay. Pwedeng hindi sa yun, pwede nangungupahan ka. Kumbaga, nakabukod ka na. Okay? Or, in some other cases, may mga tao nowadays who choose the single life. Okay? Bubukod sila, not because they have their own family or they want to have their own family, but it's because they have chosen na maging single sila. Singleness. Okay? So isa yun sa mga possible basis na adult ka na. Diba? Bihira naman siguro na bata ka pa tapos bubukod ka na unless siguro, for example, sanay ka talaga on your own. No? Pero for example, kahit nagdo-dorm ka, kahit nag-apartment ka, when you were a teenager, madalas nakadepende ka pa rin sa parents mo. Pero in young adulthood, usually, you assume responsibility. Okay? Pangalawa, marriage. No? Like what I said, no? Traditionally, in the history, marriage is the gateway to adulthood. Parang isa yan sa mga rite of passage. Okay, sa ibang bansa, no, kapag early, no, very early in your young adulthood, ikakasal na kasi isa yun sa mga gateway towards adulthood. Maybe not so much sa panahon ngayon. In the Philippines, depende. Okay, depende. It doesn't apply to everybody. But yes, up until today, pwede natin makita yung marriage just one sign that you are already in adulthood. Okay? Next, no? Finding stable work, developing and romantic relationships may be postponed until 30s or even later. Okay? Nowadays, more and more people prioritize their career. Now, gusto mo na magkaroon ng stable na trabaho, stable income, and postpone marriage and having a baby until 30s. No? So kung dati, like what I said, okay, kung dati maraming mga couples nag-aanak early, no, early 20s, mid-20s, ngayon, times are changing. So ba't kaya nangyayari yun? No? Let's talk about the specifics no, na nangyayari in the psychosocial development ng mga young adults. Starting with personality. Okay? Maybe some of you are familiar with this. Kung hindi man, let me introduce to you the big 5 traits. So, una natin pag-usapan pagkatao. And I don't think this is our first time to talk about personality development in DEVPSY. Okay? To help you recall, in childhood, pinag-usapan natin yung mga topics tulad ng temperament, di ba? And if you remember, children differ in terms of temperament. May mga batang iyakin, may mga batang tahimik, may mga batang madaling pakainin, may mga batang maarte, may mga batang makulit, may mga batang madaling pagsabihan. That's our temperament. And I remember, one of my favorite teachers in personality psychology always say, your temperament is the raw material of your personality. So, hindi pa siya fully form yung pagkatao mo nung bata ka. Pero, yun yung nagiging raw materials kung sino ka bilang isang adult ngayon. So, kung sino ka nung bata ka may not be totally the same with who you are now, pero yung temperament mo played a role in determining who you are today. Okay, so i-connect natin yung temperament, no? Pero for now, let's talk about the big 5 traits. Ocean, openness, consensuousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. According to Costa and McRae, these are the big 5 traits. And we differ in terms of gaano kataas or kababa yung openness, consensuousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism natin from one another. Let's start with something familiar, extroversion. May mga taong tahimik, mga introvert, may mga taong gusto na sila lang mag-isa, may mga taong mahilig na nasa bahay lang. On the other side of the equation, may mga tao naman na madaldal, gusto nila sila yung center of attention. Okay, gusto nila sila yung social butterfly. Gusto nila kasama nila yung friends nila, hindi mapakali sa isang lugar. They want to be, yung mga activities na exciting and so on. So that's one way we differ. Okay, in understanding your adult personality, we differ in terms of extroversion. May mga extrovert, may mga introvert, merong mga in-between. Okay? Another trait, okay, na we commonly differ is neuroticism. Opposite of that is emotional stability. So kung neurotic ka, mababa ka sa emotional stability. If emotionally stable ka, mababa ka sa neuroticism. So magkabaliktad yan. So pag sinabing neurotic, overthinker, emotional, okay, sila yung mga pwedeng insecure, anxious, okay, prone to mental disorders like depression, anxiety disorders. Okay, overthinker, sila yan. Sila yung mga neurotic. Ako may pagka-neurotic ako and I'm aware of it. Okay, mabilis akong kabahan, mabilis akong nervyusin, I'm an overthinker, hindi ako mapakali. For example, for example, if merong deadline sa work tapos alam ko hindi ko pa nagagawa, no? I'm an overthinker. Okay? I won't identify myself as emotionally stable. Okay, whereas may mga tao naman na emotionally stable, sila yung mga kabaliktaran ng sinabi ko, sila yung mga kalmado, instead na insecure, sila yung mga secure. Okay? Sila yung mga kung matagal pa yung deadline, huwag mo muna isipin. Okay lang yan, chill lang tayo. So that's emotional stability. And we also differ in terms of that. Some of you who are listening sa video na to, mga neurotic, okay, mga overthinker. For example, if you're reviewing for the board exam, di ka na mapakali. Well, some of you are relaxed lang. Okay, hindi ko naman sinasabing mali maging o hindi maganda maging emotionally stable. May mga pagkakataon na magandang emotionally stable ka. For example, if yung trabaho mo, flight attendant ka, dapat emotionally stable ka talaga. Pero on the other hand, of course, yung neuroticism, no? Magiging prone ka sa psychological disorders, no? Kasi worry ka ng worry, di ba? Napaka-emotional mo. Pero a little bit of neuroticism can also be good, okay, in certain situations. Okay? For example, ako as a neurotic person, in situations na kunyari may mga deadline, imposible hindi ko magagawa yung trabaho before the deadline kasi ino-overthink ko yung deadline. Okay? Parang yun yung role ko, no? Taga-remind sa lahat na meron pa tayong hindi natatapos, we need to do something about it. No? And so, in relation to that, let's talk about conscientiousness. Ito yung pagiging masipag, kabaliktaran yan, tamad. Kapag conscientious ka, ikaw yung organized, ikaw yung careful, ikaw yung disciplined. Kapag mababa ka dito, ikaw yung disorganized, careless, impulsive. So, if you know somebody na palaging on time, or if not advanced, no, maaga, conscientious yun. If you know someone who is always late, who do not honor yung pinag-usapan ninyo, who do not honor their obligations, mababa yun sa conscientiousness. And we're talking about this because sa trabaho, usually what brings success to people is their level of conscientiousness. It's not even their IQ, but it's their perseverance. Yung sipag nila. Okay? Ako, ito yung nagpapanalos. I'm not highly conscientious. Nasa gitna lang ako. May mga taong mas masipag pa sa akin. I'm even disorganized and I know it. No? Pero one thing na I know about myself is that I am conscious in terms of what needs to be done. No? Like, kung may trabaho ako, hindi ko siya pababayaan. Plus the fact that I'm neurotic. No? So, I always make sure that I comply. Yun yung pagkatao ko. Kunyari, bibigyan mo ako ng deadline, I submit before the deadline. If you ask me to do something, I will do my job. Okay? Kapag kunyari kailangan mag-aral, talagang babasahin ko yung kailangan ko basahin. That's my personality. Okay? So, there you go. No? So, for example, no, if you know somebody, kunyari pinahiram mo ng pera, tapos binayaran ka on time, conscientious yun. Pero kung parang sa kanya, wala lang, hindi niya ino-honor obligation niya, possible na mababa siya. Yung mga workaholic, tsaka disciplined people are high in conscientiousness. Okay? Now let's talk about openness. Openness is about being open to new things, new interests, no, variety instead of routine. Yan, imagination. So yung mga taong mataas dito, sila yung mga creative people. Mga bagay na trabaho sa'yo, kunyari, sa ano ka, marketing ka, kasi makakaisip ka ng mga bagong ideas. You need to be high in creativity. You need to be open to new experiences. Yung mga mababa dito, gusto nila yung nakagawian na. Okay, instead yung something na bago. So, that explains kung bakit may mga adult who are open to new things at bakit may mga adult na kontento na kung ano yung nakasanayan. Because we differ in terms of openness. For example, pag-usapan natin yung mga issues nowadays. Things like divorce, same-sex marriage, and so on. Yung mga taong mataas sa openness, let's accept the changes. Yun yung sasabihin nila. Whereas yung mga taong mababa sa openness, gusto ko yung nakagawian because I'm used to it. Okay? So, kung pagkakabaliktaran nito, pagiging traditional. So, saan ka ba dyan? Mataas, mababa, or somewhere in between? And finally, we have agreeableness. Kapag mataas ka dito, ikaw yung mabait, soft-hearted, trusting, helpful. Kapag mababa ka dito, ikaw yung medyo suplado, suplada, maldito, maldita, ruthless, suspicious, uncooperative. Ikaw yung maraming kaaway or ikaw yung medyo mahirap lapitan. Pero kung mataas ka dito, ikaw yung approachable. So, people also differ in terms of their agreeableness. Like, for example, may mga professors kayo na approachable, may mga professors din naman kayo na terror. So, they differ in terms of agreeableness. So, tayong lahat, we have a unique combination ng ocean natin. And that describes your personality. Okay? So, ngayon, connecting that to temperament, may role yung temperament eh. Kunyari, yung mga batang iyakin, posibleng paglaki nila, neurotic sila. Yung mga batang kaya mag-focus instead na easily distracted, pwedeng paglaki nila, conscientious sila. Yung mga batang tahimik, pwedeng maging introvert sila. Well, yung mga batang welcoming sa strangers, pwedeng maging extrovert. Okay? And so on. So kung makikita natin, who you are as a child may in a way predict kung sino ka as an adult if we talk about temperament and traits. Alright? So there you go. Moving forward, according to Erik Erikson, if you remember Erikson's theory, okay, this stage is we face the crisis of intimacy versus isolation. And usually this is interpreted as the stage wherein we are looking for partners, particularly romantic partners. Okay? Because the opposite of that is facing a sense of isolation and self-absorption. Okay? So that's why a lot of people are being asked, particularly those in their 20s, okay lang ka ba mag-aasawa? Because this is the stage of intimacy versus isolation. Okay? This is the stage we're in. Dalas pag-usapan ng word na love, no, marriage, romantic relationship, wherein it is defined by Erikson as the mature devotion that overcomes differences. Okay? And kung kabaliktaran niya, exclusivity. Okay? Kung merong love, exclusivity naman is parang sarili mo lang iniisip mo. You are self-absorbed. Pero it becomes abnormal when it already blocks your ability to cooperate. Okay? Kapag, for example, it's not just about relationship, but you have become a selfish person. Okay? Pero let me just clarify, now that we're talking about intimacy versus isolation, that this is not only resolved through marriage. And it's not correct to say that people who have chosen to be single failed in this stage. The way Erikson wrote it, I don't think yun lang yung tinutukoy niya na marriage lang. Because there are other ways to resolve this stage. For example, sa mga clergy, no? Sa mga religious people who have chosen to be single, or who have to be single, for example, sa mga priests, nuns, no? And even in other religions, some would say they're married to God, to the Lord. And in a way, di ba, parang ano rin yun, it's a different way of establishing intimacy. Okay? And that's their way of resolving the stage. May mga tao rin naman na single pero they have chosen to be married, quote, no, married to what they do, to their mission. For example, buhay nila nakadedicate na sa pagtulong sa mga mahihirap. Okay? What else? You can also solve this stage through friendship, not only through partners. No? The role of friends is also very important. Okay. Meron nga tinatawag sa DEVPSY na victim kin. Sila yung mga friends who are considered and behave like family members. I don't know if meron kayong victim kin na tinuturing. Okay? But yun yung tawag sa kanila. Yung friend na parang pamilya na yung turing. So the main idea here is that while marriage is a very important, factor to consider in this crisis, it is not the only, path. It's not the only way to resolve the stage of intimacy versus isolation. Because there are other ways to establish intimacy. Okay? Pero if you notice, no, the stage before this is identity versus identity confusion. Okay? And what's the significance of that? Basically, what Erickson is telling us is that kailangan kilala mo yung sarili mo before you establish intimacy. Because if you don't really know yourself, it's hard to establish intimacy. For example, in terms of sexuality, kanino ka attracted, for example, baka hindi mo alam. Or in terms of values, baka hindi mo alam ano ba yung values ng isang tao na hinahanap mo. Baka hindi kayo tugma, baka mag-clash kayo. Diba? Okay, so let's talk more about love and romantic relationships. So, in developmental psychology, here are some factors that contribute to attraction. One of them, of course, is first impressions. That's very important. We always say that first impression lasts. Okay. What else? Familiarity and similarity. Familiarity, gaano mo ba kakilala yung tao? No? Proximity plays a role. If you always see the person, no? If you're always with the person, it also plays a role. And similarity. For example, same ba kayo na psych student? Same ba kayo ng mga values? Okay, same ba kayo ng mga attitudes? Same ba kayo ng personality? Same ba kayo ng hobbies, ng interests, and so on? In DEVPSY, meron tayong tinatawag na consensual validation, which refers to our own attitudes and behaviors are supported and validated when someone else's attitudes and behaviors are similar to our own. Yun pala kaya gusto natin to be surrounded by the people who are similar to us. Kasi nabavalidate tayo. Okay? There's somebody who can confirm what we feel. There's somebody who understands what we are saying, what we are thinking. Diba? So, that's a big factor, no? To feel validated, especially in a romantic relationship. Alright? Another factor, of course, no? Well, there are various factors, pero another factor that is considered is physical attractiveness. But of course, we know that this is not everything. But yes, it plays a role. Okay? And according to one hypothesis in developmental psychology, called the matching hypothesis, we end up choosing someone close to our own level of attractiveness. Ewan ko kung mag-agree kayo dito. Pero according to matching hypothesis, people may have the tendency to like attractive people. Pero at the end of the day, you choose somebody, okay, who has a similar level of attractiveness to you. Yan yung isa sa mga perspectives on mate selection. Well, since yun na rin yung usapan natin, what are the other perspectives on selecting a partner? Let's talk about evolution. Okay? Let's talk about parental investment theory. Before I define it, I would like to ask you something. Why is it that yung mga hayop, kunyari yung lalaking pusa or aso, bakit maraming anak? Tapos iba-iba yung partner. Tapos bakit kaya yung babaeng pusa or aso, okay, usually, kunyari may alaga kang babaeng animal, no? Ang ginagawa mo, careful ka kung sino yung makakabuntis sa kanya. No? Hindi ka papayag na kung sino-sino lang. What else? Bakit kaya yung mga animals in the wild, bakit kaya gusto nila to be with the alpha or the leader? Diba? So those are some interesting questions. And why does physical attractiveness matters? Diba? So let's talk about parental investment theory, which is based on evolution. It's telling us that sex differences in mate preferences, meaning yung differences ng mga lalaki at babae in terms of pagpili ng partner, are based on the different amounts of time and effort men and women invest in pagpapalaki ng anak. So balik ako sa first question ko. Bakit usually pag lalaki maraming anak? No? I'm not justifying the behavior, pero ba't may mga cases na lalaki pero iba-iba yung partner? I'm not saying it's correct. No, I'm just explaining this from the evolution perspective. Sinasabi kasi ng evolution sa atin na usually ang choose sa partner babae instead of lalaki. Dahil ang lalaki spends only minutes sa paggawa ng anak, ng offspring. While women spend months and if not years sa pagpapalaki ng anak. In layman's term, may mawawala kasi sa babae. While sa lalaki, wala masyado. Okay? So, balik tayo dun sa animals. No? Yung pusa, no, na lalaki kung sino-sino yung partner, kung saan-saan may anak. Okay? While yung babaeng pusa choosy, gusto niya kung sino yung pinaka-healthy na mga pusa, yung magiging tatay ng anak niya. Okay? All of those make sense from the perspective of evolution. Okay? Kaya choosy yung babae according to evolution, it's because your window to reproduce is quite limited. For example, sa mga tao, no, may menopause kasi na tinatawag. After that, hindi ka na magkakaanak bilang babae. While sa mga lalaki, kahit 80 years old, nagkakaanak pa. Okay. So if we're going to talk about this in the perspective of evolution, the role kasi of the human being or the goal is to reproduce, to be fruitful and multiply. Okay? Yung lalaki hindi choosy sa partner, kunyari lalaking pusa, no? Kung sino-sino yung inaanakan niya, kasi that will fulfill the goal of evolution. I mean the goal which is to reproduce, no? To survive and to multiply. Pero yung babae, kailangan daw maging choosy, sabi ng evolution, kasi since limited yung window ninyo, limited lang din yung mga pwedeng maging anak ninyo. Kaya kung pipili ka, galingan mo na daw pumili, sabi ng evolution. While yung lalaki kasi only spends minutes, okay, sa sexual intercourse, sa mating. Kaya iba-iba yung partner. While ang isang babae has to spend months sa pagdadalang tao, sa pagdadala ng anak niya. Which is why there are differences. That's why this theory is illuminating why men have the tendency, or males in general, not only men, pero even mga males na mga animals can be more sexually active than women. That's one perspective, the parental investment theory. In short, para matandaan nyo, sa babae kasi, malaki yung investment ninyo as a parent. Whereas sa lalaki, minutes lang yung ini-invest. Siyempre, iba sa mga tao, kailangan panintigan mo yun. Pero sa mga animals, usually yung hayop may nanay pero hindi alam kung sino yung tatay. So because the male only spent minutes mating with the woman, or the female, I mean. Okay? Pero yung babae is in charge of pagbubuntis dun sa anak niya, as well as feeding the babies. Okay? So that's why there are differences in males and females, no, according to parental investment theory. The next theory is social role theory, which tells us that there are, yun namang differences natin has something to do with gender roles. Like, yung mga nakagawian natin, no? Like, o kailangan kapag pipili ka, kunyari sa mga babae, di ba tatanungin ng nanay, o anak, may trabaho ba yan? Anak, kaya mo ka bang buhayin yan? Okay? Tapos on the other hand, kapag yun namang lalaki nagpakilala ng girlfriend niya, anak, ano ba yan? For example, mabibigyan ka ba niya ng anak? Okay, o kaya naman, will that person be a good kaya ba niyang alagaan magiging anak ninyo? Ipagluluto ka ba niyan? And so on. Kasi yun yung mga traditional masculine and feminine roles. Okay? Pero, isa rin sa mga na-observe na mga nagtetest ng theory na to, no? Habang tumatagal, nag-iiba na yung mga factors influencing mate selection on both sexes. Nowadays, lumiliit na yung importance ng financial power ng lalaki sa lumiliit yung importance niya doon sa pagpili ng babae ng isang lalaki. Bakit? Dahil nowadays, more and more women are working. More and more women have the capacity to earn on their own. Kaya kung dati big deal na may trabaho ang isang lalaki at stable yung trabaho niya, now big deal pa rin naman siya pero not as like as before. Kasi bilang babae, ano rin may sarili ka na rin career mo nowadays. Unlike dati sa bahay ka lang, yun yung pananaw ng mga tao. Now, it's different. Okay? On the other hand, dati ang bigat ng importance ng domestic skills ng babae. Pagluluto, paglalaba, and so on. Nowadays, hindi na rin siya ganun kabigat na factor. Because nowadays, the society accepts that even men should also play a role in maintaining the house. Yan, nagko-contribute na rin dapat sa mga household chores. At ang pagpapalaki ng anak is not only the role of the woman, but it's the role of both lalaki at babae. Okay? Under that, pag-usapan natin yung assortive mating. And according sa assortive mating, it's a term from sociologists telling us that we have the tendency to mate with somebody who has similar traits sa atin. For example, no, isa sa mga napansin ng sociologists, for example, bihira na ang isang mayaman magpapakasal sa mahirap. Bihira na, although pwede nowadays, no, pero most of the time, you marry somebody na same mo ng social status, katayuan sa buhay, same kayo ng nationality, same kayo ng religion, religious beliefs, same kayo ng culture, and so on. That's what assortive mating is telling us. So, kung napapansin nyo, ganun yung, for example, mayaman ka, hahanapan ka ng partner na mayaman din. Or you will be asked by your parents to also look for a partner na mayaman din. Kung nanggaling ka sa isang religion, you will be asked by your parents to also look for a partner na ganun din yung religion. So that's what assortive mating is saying.